Teresa. I'm a crystal meth addict. Oh my gosh, I'm so blessed to be here. And thank you so much to the committee for asking me to come and share for you. I went up to my room last night, and there was this beautiful gift basket with a whole bunch of food and drinks and, candles and gifts. And there was a thank you envelope. And so I opened it, and there was a whole bunch of money in there. And the last time I remember getting money in an envelope on the dresser in my hotel room, I was not being reimbursed for travel expenses. Yes, things were very different. So anyway, I am so grateful to be here. I have to tell you, this is like one of my favorite things to do is speak and tell my story. I had a really hard time getting sober. My sobriety date's October 1st, 2001. I have 15 years of sobriety, and I don't say that to That's not to impress you. That's because it impresses me. I had, like I said, a really hard time getting sober, and to stay sober for more than a day is just a miracle. So I have a home group. My home group is the Lambda Phoenix Center. My 8 o'clock Friday night meeting, the reality meeting, is my home group meeting. I am the treasurer of my home group. I am badged to go into the Maricopa County jails. I do CMA meetings and the prostitution diversion program in the jails. I have 12 sponsees, and I do volunteer work for Catholic Charities. They have the prostitution diversion program goes through Catholic Charities, and also ASU has their social work program for sex trafficking. So that's where I do a lot of my service work. It's a lot of stuff. And I know that being on committees, there's so much work involved. I've served on many. Oh, I am serving on a committee right now. I forgot about that, for a women's retreat. And I know how much work it is to put these things together, and you've all just done a beautiful job. This is absolutely wonderful, so thank you. So I started using meth when I was 14. Actually, it wasn't street meth. It was pharmaceutical amphetamines. I came from a good family. My dad was a doctor. My mom was a nurse. We grew up in a 6-bedroom home with a swimming pool, and there was no active drug addiction or alcoholism in my family. I had a good childhood. I was an athlete. I was a gymnast, and I spent most of my childhood in the gym training 5-6 days a week and competition on the weekends. I was the Arizona State champion 2 years in a row, and number 4 in the nation on balance beam in 1985. So I was a national balance beam champion. So I had a lot of success in gymnastics. However, when I was 14 years old, I discovered amphetamines, and I found out that if I took them before workouts, I had really good workouts. I felt strong and powerful, and so I became very dependent on those right away. And I discovered if I didn't take them before workouts, my timing was off, I felt weak, I felt slow. So they didn't start drug testing in the Olympics until 1984. So prior to that, a lot of us were taking pain medications so we could compete with injuries. A lot of us were taking amphetamines, performance-enhancing drugs, and things to help us control our weight because they really wanted us to look thin out on the floor. I went to college on a full-ride gymnastics scholarship at ASU. And when I say full ride, I mean everything was paid for. I had room, board, books, tuition, per diem. Everything was paid for 6 years. And I did not get my bachelor's degree. How do you do that? So by the time I got to college, I had experimented a little bit with A to Z. You name it, I tried it. And high school was very experimental. I was in the gym training, competition on weekends, and every Saturday night I found the party. I got drunk, I got wasted, and this is just the way it was. And college at ASU has a reputation for being a big party school. So, I discovered at ASU that everybody partied as much as I did, and half of us would be in one room freebasing cocaine, and I was in that room, and, smoking cigarettes all weekend. And, I'd show up at the gym on Monday, And I hadn't eaten all weekend, and Coach would be like, wow, you girls look great. Keep doing what you're doing. I don't know if he had any idea, but I had a partner in crime. She scored the first 10 in NC2A competition on the bars, so she's kind of famous for that. But that girl, man, her and I, we found the party. We would fly and we'd travel all over the country and compete. And after the meet was over, we would find out where the party was and who had the drugs. And we'd be out all night, and we'd just barely make it back in time to catch the plane home. So we had some fun. But I will tell you, the difference between me and the girls that I competed with at ASU is that when college was over, they were able to put down the drugs and the alcohol, and I did not. So they graduated, they started careers, they got married, they bought homes, they had families, and I didn't do any of that. Like I said, I didn't graduate. I fake graduated in 1987 with a fake bachelor's degree in elementary education. I was supposed to be a second grade school teacher, and I would be up all night, just out of my mind, showing up at school, and I've got these second grade kids, and you know what second graders are like. You can't reason with them. They're a little out of control, and by noon, I start crashing and burning, and I hate these kids, and I want to kill them. And, I got 3 hours left, so by 3 o'clock, I'm pulling my hair out, and I'm like, you know what? I made a big mistake. I wasn't supposed to be a school teacher. I hate kids, and that is not true today. But this was during my student teaching. So anyway, in 1987, they didn't have computers like they do now, and you take your final exams and you graduate on Friday night. Well, nobody knew that I was failing all my classes, and I didn't tell anyone. So I graduated with my class. I wore the cap and gown. My name is in the book, and family came in town to celebrate, and I failed all my classes. So I did not graduate. And I want to tell you, I did not come clean about that story for a really, really long time. Like I told everybody, oh yeah, I have a bachelor's degree, but I never got it. So anyway, I had a friend who was a topless dancer, and she said, Teresa, you can make a whole bunch of money, and you can, be high all the time. And I was like, wow, that's a great idea. So, so I used to say, oh, a bachelor's degree went out the window, but since I never got it, 6 years of college went out the window, and I started a career in the adult industry. And, it started with topless dancing, and then went to nude dancing, and like I said, I was a gymnast, so I had some moves, so I could make some money. And then, the time came where I was doing so much drugs, and I started picking at my skin, and I weighed 90 pounds on a good day, and I was so skinny. My rib bones were sticking out, my hip bones were sticking out, my collarbone was sticking out, and I was flat-chested, and I had no ass. And I could not dance. The 6-inch, 7, 8-inch stilettos, I couldn't wear them anymore. I couldn't walk because I was too high. I would have to crawl on the floor, and raise my leg because I couldn't do it. Or I'd go, truck it on the end of the runway. It was just like this, and I'd do one of these. So what I used to do is I would spend 2 hours putting makeup on the scabs on my legs, and I would put 2 layers of stockings and then a layer of fishnets to cover the scabs on my legs. I looked so bad. So I couldn't dance on stage anymore, and I started doing some internet porn, real low budget. If you find any of my stuff, let me know, because I can't find it. I've looked. The kind of porn that they pay you for the day and you never see them again. That's it. You don't know what happened to it. I said if I run for public office, it'll turn up. But that's not going to happen. So I did some porn. I did some internet stuff. And then the last 6 years of my addiction before I got sober, I was a full-service prostitute working for the escort services. And that's just where my addiction took me. There's so much powerlessness and so much unmanageability in my story. I was so, when I talk about powerlessness, it's like today in recovery, it's all about our integrity, which is our word. You say you're going to do something, you make sure that you get there somehow, some way. And I could not, like I said, I couldn't even get myself together to to get to work anymore. But, my sister asked me to be the godmother of my nephew when he was getting baptized, and I didn't show up. And the thing is I was either too high to deal with the people or I wasn't high enough to get there. And I just, I couldn't get it together. I remember trying to make a doctor's appointment, and the lady on the other line is saying, can you be here at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning? And in my mind, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to feel next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Like, I cannot promise you, I cannot tell you that I can be somewhere at any particular time. I just could not get it together. I have 4 assault charges. I've been to jail for assault, I have a prostitution charge, a stolen vehicle charge. I shot my boyfriend with a .22, shot him in the leg. He was really pissed. So I have a weapons charge. I didn't kill him. It wasn't a murder or attempted or anything like that. Just a weapons charge. And he came after me to get the gun away. And it was like one of these things. There's 5 shots left in the gun, and I'm thinking, oh, my life is over. I'm never going to see my mom again. But he takes the gun. I was dancing on a under contract overseas in Guam when this happened. And he got the gun away. He took off, and I left Guam to go over to the dancer's apartment. And one of my friends, I had no shoes on my feet. All I had was a T-shirt. I had no ID. One of the dancers said, come on, we need to get the hell out of here. And she put a plane flight on her credit card, and I left. I was just gone right away. So much craziness. I cooked meth for 2 years. I had a meth lab. That was interesting. My meth lab partner was murdered. His body was cut up into pieces, and I was the one that had to identify him. The only piece that was ever found was his leg. And if you ever see the show Forensic Files, it's called A Leg to Stand On. Happened in 1993, and that was the case. What happened was he had asked me if I could get some acid, and I got it, and I called, pagers, 1993 pagers, right? So I paged him, and this was on a Friday night, and I said, I got what you asked for. So he never returned the page, which was really unusual because, like I said, we were cooking meth, so we were always doing some deals. And usually if, I was paging him, we needed to make some arrangements. Well, the whole weekend goes by and I don't hear from him. On Monday morning, his leg is found in the dumpster by a homeless person. And it was big news. They never found the rest of the body. They didn't know who this person was. And it didn't occur to me that that could have been my friend. And my... 10 days later, I just thought he shacked up with some strippers for the weekend, and I'd eventually hear from him. Well, we never heard from him. 10 days later, I made a missing persons report, and I was interviewed by the detectives for like 2.5 hours, and then they decided that I could identify this leg, and it took me half a second to look at it, and I said, yes, that's absolutely him. DNA was brand new. They did a DNA tissue match 2 weeks later. Now, in the show, I'm not featured in the show. The girlfriend, they went to her to try to have her identify it, and she refused. So anyway, that happened. So my life was crazy. There was a lot of unmanageability. My moment of clarity happened when I was working at the escort service, and I had a girl, I was 35 years old, my moment of clarity. I'd been working in the adult industry for 14 years, and I had sold some meth to one of the girls, and she had called me that night, and she had given the meth to her mom. She called me that night, and she said, my mom's really sick. Do you have any pain pills? And I happened to have a bag of Darvocets laying around, so I said, yes, I'll bring these to work tomorrow. So I get to work the next day to give her the pills. I said, give these to your mom, and she said, my mom died last night. That's what I did. I went, and I couldn't breathe for a minute, and I remember thinking, that's how I'm going to die. I'm going to die like this. What happened was she had shot up a piece of cotton and got cotton poisoning, and it killed her overnight. And she was 42 years old. Now, if you're 42 and you're an IV meth user, you're probably not very healthy, and it'd be very easily become septic and die overnight from something like that. So I couldn't breathe for a minute, and I was like, oh my God. And today I know that God spoke to me in that moment, that God was telling me this is where you're headed. So that day, I decide that I'm going to stop using, and I'm going to clean up my life. And it doesn't occur to me, now by now I've been using for 20 years, and it doesn't occur to me that if I make a decision to stop, that I'm not going to be able to do it. I didn't know that that was going to happen. And for the next 3 years, so I got sober when I was 38 years old. So from 35 to 38, I spent 3 years suffering in the powerlessness and the despair of this disease. The powerlessness of getting up every day, wanting so badly, more than anything, to be sober today, and not being able to do it. And I remember sitting in the bathroom with my face in my hands crying and saying to myself, what is wrong with me? Normal people don't live like this. Why can't I stop? And the reason I can't stop is because I have a disease I'm powerless over, and I had no idea. I did not have that vocabulary. I did not know that word to describe what I was experiencing, but I experienced it every day. And those were probably the most depressing, like I said, the despair, just the despair of not being able to do this thing. So in 2001, in February, I started going to recovery meetings, and I love Crystal Meth Anonymous. You know, I love speaking to you guys because I can be as raunchy as I want to be, and you guys can be right there with me. So I went into Crystal Meth Anonymous, and you all embraced me, and this was in February, so my sobriety date's October. I spent 9 months sitting in these rooms, and I am so grateful that the only requirement for membership is a desire to not use. And my life was just so unmanageable. I talked about my criminal charges, and, one of the things that I say is that if part of your workday includes the phrase, please don't come on my face, your life is unmanageable. Or the other ones that, anal is extra. And if you're going to piss on me, it has to be from the neck down. Because I don't want to redo my makeup. That shit takes too long. Oh, I wish I could see what she was doing. Oh, gosh, okay. So anyway, so February 2001, I start coming to these meetings, and I start listening to what you guys had to say. And, nobody kicked me out. I wasn't sober yet. Everybody embraced me, and I started hearing about the tools of the program. On page 25, it talks about we pick up this simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. And for the longest time, like, what are the tools? What are the tools? I don't get it. I don't understand. Well, the tools are the things that we hear in the meeting. Go to meetings, get a sponsor, read the big book, work the steps, call your sponsor, be of service, pray, meditate. All of those things are the tools that we use in this program. And I guarantee you, if you're struggling and you pick up a couple of those tools, you're going to feel different afterwards, and something's going to change. But you got to be willing. You got to be willing to do that. August, September, things start getting really crazy for me. I start having demon hallucinations, and demons were coming out of the light fixtures, and I remember being just so terrified that I couldn't move. And it was one of those things that I kind of felt like the devil knew that if I got sober, that I would be a warrior for God. And they were having this fight over my soul. And as long as I was an addict, Satan had a grip on my soul because I would do anything. And if I was able to put that behind me, I would hopefully be the shining star that you see before you. And this was something that I knew that this was this struggle that was going on. So like I said, it was really, really hard for me to get here. I was having the hallucinations, and at the time, my boyfriend called my dad, who's a doctor, and said, Teresa's really sick. She needs to go into the hospital. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital on psych meds, and then I left there, went straight into a treatment center or a treatment program for 10 days. I got kicked out for sexually inappropriate behavior. Anyway, the blessing that I was there, the blessing that I got from that is I met my sponsor. So she came in, she did an H&I meeting, I got her phone number, wrote it in my big book, and when I got kicked out of there, I called that number. And I had 3.5 weeks of sobriety, and I was scared to death. I knew that I couldn't go home. I wasn't ready. And if I went home, I didn't know, I know for a fact, from the top of my head to the bottom of my toes, I can never, ever, ever use again. I have that gift of desperation of knowing I can never, ever use again. And I knew that if I went, I didn't know that if I went home that I would be able to do that. So my sponsor said, oh, you've got, 3.5 weeks, you got kicked out, you're still sober. I said, yes. And she said, okay, well, why don't you try going into a halfway house? And the halfway house was a 90-day commitment, and she goes, even if you hate it, no matter what, stick it out for 30 days. I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I went to that halfway house, and I lived there for 14 months. I spent my entire first year of recovery living in a halfway house, and it was the best decision I ever made. I swear to God, that halfway house saved my life. I got to spend an entire year fully 100% committed to just sobriety and nothing else. And it was amazing. I got up, I was kitchen duty, so I got up at 3:45. I opened the kitchen at 4 a.m., started the coffee, started making breakfast. There was 100 people that lived here, and I got to say good morning to every person that lived in that halfway house every day. And, there were so many amazing things that happened in my life. I worked the steps. I, got my sponsor. I had an H&I commitment. I was doing inventory at central office for the big books. I was a proofreader for the Grapevine. I started serving on committees. I dove right in. I started sponsoring at 45 days of sobriety. I had a little 12-year-old girl that had just gotten kicked out of jail, and she was in an H&I meeting that I was chairing, and she came to the halfway house, and I didn't know what to do with her. We played basketball in the parking lots. I didn't know what to do, but that was my first sponsee. I started sponsoring right away. My sponsor kept me really, really busy, and you had breakfast at 7, you had to go do something meaningful for the day, get a job or whatever you can do, and dinner at 5, go to a meeting, call your sponsor, and you had to have your meeting slip signed, and if you weren't progressing in your step work, you would get kicked out. It was very strict. We had a curfew. It was exactly what I needed. I needed that structure. So if anybody's really struggling with sobriety on the outside, try a halfway house and just be fully committed to that. So I had 15 months of sobriety when I moved out, and I moved in with a girl who had 15 years, and her and I shared a sponsor. And I looked up to this girl because she, 15 years when you're brand new, that's a lot of time. And I remember, she prayed in the morning, and she meditated at night, and she did a 10-step inventory, and she was sponsoring, and she was being of service at central office. So she's doing all this stuff that I'm told to do, and in my mind, I'm like, wow, if I keep doing what I'm doing, someday I'll have 15 years of sobriety. Well, I want to tell you, and I will share about this, I have sexual recovery as well. Like I said, I worked in the adult industry for 14 years, so there was a lot of work that I needed to do in my sexual behavior, and that inventory came. So, but prior to that, my roommate and I, we were acting out in our sexual behavior, so just because we put the drugs down doesn't mean we're well. And I was acting in a way that was very addictive, and I remember getting ready to go to the sex club, putting on the makeup and the high heels and the dress, and walking into the club and feeling the adrenaline and the anticipation, just like when we were getting drugs, when you're waiting for the drug dealer calls and says, the eagle has landed, and you get that feeling of anticipation, and I started feeling that, and I knew that there was something wrong with that. Well, that girl that had 15 years of sobriety, her and I were running around like maniacs. She had a boyfriend, she was cheating on him, and at some point I remember thinking, do you get to stay sober and be dishonest about your sexual behavior? And the answer is no, because she relapsed. And I want to tell you, it broke my heart. And I remember, I had gotten caught with her. We were both running around, like I said, getting in trouble. And I remember feeling like, oh my God, I'm going to use. And I had right around 2 years of sobriety at the time. And I got really, really scared. I was this close. And I remember thinking, I can pick up this phone and I can call and get some drugs, or I can call my sponsor. And I called my sponsor. Of course, I hadn't been honest with her about my behavior. So I told her what I was doing, and she goes, well, you need to make some amends. And I did not want to make those amends, but I made them because I didn't want to get loaded. And my sobriety sister got loaded. So that was a really growing experience for me. my first sexual inventory was my first year sober. I had done another one at 5 years, and then at 8 years of sobriety, I did the one. So anyway, we'll get there. We'll get to that. But I want to share with you some other experience that I've had in recovery. That was a close call. At 2.5 years of sobriety, I couldn't get a job. Like, nobody would hire me. I had no resume. I had titty bars and escort services on my resume, and so I didn't have a resume. The only thing I said I could be good at was customer service. so, so I couldn't get a job. So basically what I was doing is I was cleaning houses. I was scrubbing toilets, mopping floors, and you know what? It was the first honest work that I had done in, forever. And I got paid $10 an hour cash at the end of the day. And I remember it was the rebuilding of my self-esteem. Just when that house was clean at the end of the day, I looked at it and I was like, wow, the house looks nice. I did this. These people are going to come home from work today and they're going to be like, oh, the house looks nice. So anyway, I started to feel good about myself. Like, I started to have these feelings of accomplishment, and I hadn't felt that ever. So, and then other little things, like my first service commitment in Crystal Meth Anonymous was that I was the chip girl. So at our monthly committee meetings, I would supply all the meetings with chips, and everybody started to get to know me as Teresa, the chip girl, and I started to feel important. So, these tiny little things, we talk about being of service, and, we're of service. The gift is for us. These are the tiny little things that were occurring that I started to feel like I had something important to do. At 2.5 years of sobriety, I decided to go back to school to become a certified nursing assistant. And I did really well in school, and I, aced all my exams, and I passed my state boards, and everybody in my class got their license in the mail. And I got the letter from the State Board of Nursing saying, we cannot certify you because of your criminal history. Now, on paper, I've got 4 assault charges, a stolen vehicle, criminal damage, weapons charge, and prostitution. So the Department of Public Safety's job is to protect the public from people like me. If I'm active in my addiction and I'm doing these things, I should not have a license to take care of a vulnerable sick person. And, but I looked at that and I said, you know what, that's not who I am today. So small print at the bottom of that letter said, you can appeal this decision, and I decided to go forward with that appeal. The appeal hearing took 1 year. At 3.5 years of sobriety, I showed up at the State Board of Nursing, and I had to jump through hoops. There was a lot of stuff I had to supply, all the court documents, all my police reports. I'd have a psychiatric evaluation. I had to do a whole bunch of stuff to make this happen. And the very first time I met with my investigator, I was honest with her about who I was. And I had people say, oh, don't tell the State Board of Nursing you're a drug addict. You'll never get your license. And my sponsor said, you tell them the truth about who you are. And as full of fear as I was, I told them the truth about who I was, and my investigator was impressed with that. Because they know, and everybody lies and everybody hides it, but if you tell the truth. So from that day forward, she advocated for me. So I showed up at my state board hearing, and I had my 1, 2, and 3 year sobriety chips. I had God Grant Me the Serenity plaque that was engraved October 1st, 2001, because I thought if it was engraved, it was proof of my sobriety date. And, I talked to them. I said, these are the meetings I go to. These are the commitments I have. I do, this, that, and the other thing. And when I was done, one of the women on the state board said, we've never had anyone talk about recovery like you have. And they denied 31 licenses that day, and they granted mine. So, what a huge victory that day was in my recovery. That day was a spiritual experience. I remember thinking, with God and these 12 steps, I can accomplish anything I want. And so I got a job working at an assisted living facility, and I was the person that had the key to the med cabinet. And I remember, you start your shift and you have to count all the meds, the controlled, the good stuff, the benzos, the liquid morphine, the syringes, all that stuff. And I remember thinking, what a miracle that I am this person that is responsible for this. After that, I was a nanny for 7 years. I took care of a little autistic boy. He was 9 years old when I started taking care of him. He had no speech, and that little boy started talking when he was 12 years old. And I used to take him to Special Olympics and speech therapy and OT, and we just ran around all day long, and he loved airplanes. On Friday, we'd go to the airport and watch the planes land, and he'd bring a suitcase, and we'd throw it on the carousel and watch it go around and take it off. Like, I'd take him to go see fireworks, and we'd go watch the hot air balloons launch, and then we became honorary crew members of the hot air balloon company, and then every year on his birthday, we go for hot air balloon rides. So I got to do so many beautiful things with this little boy, and I took care of him until he was 16 years old, and that little boy started talking, and I taught him how to put on his socks and hang up his bath towel and put his clothes in the laundry. Like, I taught him all these life skills, and I remember leaving work every day feeling so rewarded and feeling like, wow, I'm making a difference in someone's life. The mother of those children, I would show up at work and she'd be like, oh, thank God you're here. Like get the kids off the bus and, do a snack, do homework, give them baths, get them ready for bed, pray, read books. And I didn't have my own children. It was such a beautiful experience to be a part of this wonderful family. That woman gave me a key to her home the first week I was working for her. And I remember thinking, you have no idea who you're giving a key to. But so that little boy, I took care of him until he was 16. He's actually 21 now, and he just graduated from high school. His graduation was just a couple weeks ago, and how beautiful to watch that little boy. Oh. Well, he's not little. He's 6 feet tall now. But I went to his graduation, and, in front of a group of people, they had this huge party for him. He was holding a microphone, and the only thing he could say was, I don't have to go to school anymore. But you know what? That fulfilled me. Driving home from work every day because Sam learned a new word, and I'd be like, I'm doing something meaningful with my life. It was so fulfilling. So I decided to go back to school, and this was a few years ago, and this was at the point where I had to get my transcripts from ASU, and I had discovered that I failed all those classes. Like, I knew I didn't get my degree, but I didn't realize I had done that badly. But I needed to get my transcripts so I could go back to school, and I decided I wanted to go into surgery. My dad was a surgeon. I've always been fascinated by surgery, and so it took me 2.5 years to do the prerequisites and then 1 year for the program. And it was hard, anatomy and physiology, microbiology, chemistry, stuff that I really love. And I have a 4.0, and it's not because I'm smart. It's because this program taught me how to be disciplined, and I did my homework, and I read the material, and I studied for the exams, and I did really, really well. I got into my program. Oh my gosh, I've had so many God shots. The program was last year. I graduated in May of last year, right before I spoke in New York. I spoke in New York the week before my final exams, and then I got hired at the place where I did my clinicals at the Mayo Clinic. So I am employed there. What a miracle that is. But I want to tell you, during that period of time when I was in school, my program started going out the window. I was so stressed out. I was getting about 4 hours of sleep a night. I had exams every day. I had homework every day. And I was just so tired. And, I had gotten to this point where it was 2 months before I was about to graduate. And I barely get into a meeting a week. I wasn't working with sponsees anymore, and I hadn't been doing any step work with my sponsor, and I want to tell you, I was batshit crazy out of my fucking mind. And like 2 months before I was going to graduate I was just like, I can't fucking do this anymore. And I can't give up. I've worked so hard to get here. I cannot give up yet. And I made a deal with God. It was a complete surrender. It was a complete and total third step, which for me is my least favorite step. It's the hardest step I do every day. And the deal with God was, I said, I'm going to put my shoes on. I'm going to suit up and show up every single day. I'm just going to put my shoes on, walk out that front door, and the rest is yours, because that's all I can do. And I want to tell you, there was so much freedom and relief in that. But it was a hard year. And then I graduated. Before I got into the program, I had to do a background check. And I was all worried about, these are just little God shots that happened to me. I was so worried about not being able to pass that background check. And there was no place to be forthcoming about my criminal history. All they wanted was your name and social security number and your address. And, I remember calling my sponsor. I'm like, I've worked so hard. What if this prevents me? She goes, if God wants you to be there, you'll be there. So I submitted that background check, and you know what? They only looked back 7 years. Nothing showed up. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe it. So other little God shots I have to tell you, I had a car accident the summer before I started my program. And I was a student. I was working 3 jobs. I was working at Boston Market for minimum wage. I was tutoring math at my school, and I was doing some respite and habilitation care of a sister that's disabled, and I take care of her on the weekends. So, I was just crazy busy, working really hard, and I had this car accident, and I remember thinking, you know what? So I had to take a bus to get to work. It'd take me 2 hours. I'd get up at like 4 in the morning, take a 2-hour bus ride so I could, go to work. And I remember thinking, the only way I'm ever going to get a car to do my clinicals is if God drops one in my front yard. And wouldn't you know? I shared with you that I did volunteer work for Catholic Charities, and I do this with my sponsee. And my sponsee was taking care of a 95-year-old man who couldn't clean he lived in a trailer, and she was cleaning his trailer. So when he passed away, he left her his trailer and his car. And she sold the trailer and gave me the car. Like, is that a God shot or what? You know what I mean? Like, God takes care of me. And there's no reason for me to ever, ever, ever not trust God. He has shown up for me over and over and over again. I want to tell you, like, the biggest gifts that I have gotten in recovery is my self-esteem back. I started working at the Mayo. I got hired in August, and I'm brand new in my field. It's a very, very stressful job being a surgical scrub. I'm sterile at the sterile field with the surgeon. I set up the case and I pass the instruments to the doctor. And I'm not really, really good at it yet. And some doctors are really difficult to work with. They're very, very demanding, and some are just great. But right away it brings me right back to that place of not feeling good enough, and that feeling of losing my esteem. And these are the things that I've had to work on in my sobriety. Right back to doing the step work. And I had neglected step work for a year when I was in my program, and right away, the tools of the program, like I said, go to a meeting, because when I come to a meeting, I can share with you guys what I'm going through, and you guys will love me and encourage me, and I feel accepted, and I don't feel like I do when I'm in the OR and I'm not doing a good job. Call my sponsor. Well, let's do some step work on that. Work with another addict, or do some work with a sponsee. Boy, that'll take you right out of yourself. So my first step, I'm powerless. My life was unmanageable. There was no question about that step for me. Step 2, what I love about step 2, come to believe in a power greater than myself. So I went to Catholic school, and so I was given an example of a higher power when I was growing up. But the beautiful thing about step 2 is that we get to choose our higher power. And, I was told that we had a loving God, but he was also very punishing. And the nuns were so, so mean. And I remember thinking, how are these people that are teaching us about God so mean, and they were so abusive? And I was able to change that conception of God to be a loving God unconditionally, and forgive me for all my sins. Even when I'm having a bad day and I'm not behaving the way I should, God still loves me. Boy, I need that sometimes. Step 3, I shared with you, that total and complete surrender. I hate step 3. I mean, there's freedom in it, but it's just hard to do every day. We tend to be very self-willed, and every time I'm self-willed, sometimes I know it, and I have to ask myself, am I willing to take the responsibility of the consequences of me being in self-will? And sometimes I am. Step 4, my first 4-step, my sponsor told me I was delusional, and I was offended. She told me I was an asshole, and I was like, how dare you say that to me? But there was a lot of delusion in my step work. Like, I couldn't see my part in stuff. I remember having resentment. I was working at an escort service, and I got fired for doing drugs at work. And I was getting my boss high, and I'm like, that bitch. How could but what was my part in that? I was doing drugs at work. You're not supposed to get high at work. It was hard for me to look at my part in stuff. Step 5, I share it with my sponsor. She gets to tell me what a jerk I am. Step 6 and 7. So I have to share with you a spiritual experience I had the last time I did step 6 and 7. Step 6 is about willingness to let go of our character defects, and step 7 is humbly asking God to remove them. So to figure out if I was really willing, my sponsor had me make a list of all my character defects. And for each defect, ask 3 questions. The first question is, do you like this defect? And right off the top of my head, I want to say, oh no, I hate my defects. That is not true. If you look at your defects one by one, you will discover that you like some of them very much. And the second question is, how does this defect serve me? So what a learning experience for me to discover what the situations are where I use this defect. And I discovered that some of my defects work together in certain areas. And the third question is, what is the fear in letting it go? That was where the spiritual experience was. What is the fear in letting go of this defect? And in doing this step work, I discovered that all of my defects and all my fears funnel down to one thing. I'm not good enough, and I need you to accept me. I want you to like me and accept me. That's where all my behavior is driven by that one fear. What a spiritual experience it was to discover that. It was amazing. So step 8, made a list of the persons we'd harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. I actually made categories. And if you want to know that, I will share that with you later. But I made categories and just to help facilitate doing that step. Step 9, okay, this is where we're going to talk about sexual recovery. When I was 8 years sober, my husband relapsed, and the beast, the sexual addiction reared its ugly head. And I started going to Al-Anon. And instead of, complaining about my husband doing this and that and the other thing, she goes, let's do a sexual inventory. And I did this sexual inventory where I went all the way back to the first sexual experience I'd ever had. I went and looked at all the sexual experiences in my entire life and how badly I treated every single partner I've had. And when I was done, I wanted to throw up, and I had a pain in my heart. Like my heart hurt because I'd treated everybody so badly. And I was so willing to make those amends. I wrote these I spent a lot of time writing amends letters and sending them out to, all my exes. And there was so much freedom that came with that step. It was incredible. And I want to tell you, the result of that is that today I've been 100% monogamous and loyal to my husband. And I cannot say that about any relationship I've ever been in my entire life. That is the gift of doing these steps, actually a change in behavior. So step, 10, 11, 12, those are the maintenance steps. 10 is 4 through 9 on a daily basis. 11, my favorite step of all, prayer and meditation. When I was new in sobriety, living at the halfway house, I remember calling my sponsor with, drama. And she'd be like, well, I want you to go talk to God about it. And I hated that answer. I just wanted her to tell me what to do. Oh, no, this is a good lesson for you. You go and sit and talk to God about it. And what I didn't realize is that she was teaching me how to use one of the most incredible tools of this program is to sit quiet and get connected with a higher power. Because those are where the answers come from. Like if a sponsee comes to me and says, should I quit my job or leave my relationship or, make a major decision, like I don't have that answer. I can't tell you that, but God can. Go spend some quiet time with God and God will give you those answers. So step 11 is my absolute favorite, and step 12 is, having had a spiritual experience. As a result of these steps, I carry this message and help other addicts in sobriety. And oh my gosh, I have tons of sponsees. I actually have a jail sponsee who came with me when I went to New York. And she's celebrating 10 years of sobriety this year. She was one of my jail girls. What a gift to make that difference and be able to play a part in someone's life like that. I'm excited to tell you that somebody married me. I got married. So when I was, how many years of sobriety? It's like 3.5. Yeah, 3.5 years of sobriety. I met a girl. And sexy as anything. And I 13-stepped her. She was a newcomer. I know, my sponsor just, oh God, she ripped me for that one. Anyway, so Julie, at the time, she did her step work with a sponsor. She did her 4-step and discovered that she was transgender and said, I understand if you're not on board with this, but I have to transition or I'm not going to stay sober. And Julie thought I was going to leave her. She didn't know. And I said, hey, let's find a support group. So we've been able to walk through this incredible transition together. And Julian now is my husband. And Julian had his gender reassignment surgery last November. And I want to tell you, this is how God works in my life again. A lot of preparations for this surgery. It's a major, major surgery. And we went to San Francisco, and I was scared. And you know what God did? I got a call from San Francisco 3 weeks before his surgery saying, we need you to come and speak for us. And I said, God is making sure that I have a support group when I go there. That's what he was doing. God takes care. He takes care of me. I have to tell you, when I was looking at the programming, the night before I left, I was packing to come to this trip. And, I saw the program, and I saw my name, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table, and I'm in tears because I look up and I say, God, thank you for giving me this opportunity that I get to come here and be with all of you beautiful people. I love being up here because I get to see all the faces of God's children looking back at me, and it's so, so beautiful. And that God has chosen me. It's been such a gift. My sobriety has been such a gift. My brother relapsed. Him and I had 10 years of sobriety together. His sobriety date was September 11th, and mine was October 1st, and we celebrated 10 years together. And he relapsed, and he's not back. And his life is I have no doubt, I can't relapse. I can't. I don't have it in me. I have to do whatever it takes to stay here. That's my gift of desperation, and I hope every single one of you get that. So how's my time? I don't know how long it's been. It's probably time to wrap up. Okay, so my favorite thing to end with is the bottom of page 25 in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, where it says, there is the solution. After that, it says, if you're as alcoholic or drug addicted as we were, we believe there's no middle-of-the-road solution. We come to a place where we had passed the region, there's no return through human aid, and we have two alternatives. One is to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation as best we could, which to me means I'm going to be that drug-addicted whore prostitute till the day I die. And the other is to accept spiritual help, and that spiritual help is right here. Thank you very much. God bless.